Good morning, it's July 21st, and this is To My Liberal Friends, and if you're listening on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. The Democrats have been looking for a wedge issue that they can use politically ever since the November elections. They've tried just opposing Trump on just about everything, but that's really failed to resonate with the voters. With the passage of the One Big Beautiful Bill, the Democrats seem to have found what they've been looking for. The bill makes some changes to Medicaid that intend to save the program money, and Democrats have pounced on this issue. The polling on this issue gives ammunition to both sides. On the primary issue of cutting Medicaid spending, the public shows its concern. According to a poll by the Kaiser Family Foundation, there's strong support for continued federal spending on Medicaid and other forms of health care. Across the board, Democrats, Independents, and Republicans show support for programs like Medicaid. Some of this polling is skewed because at this point in time, 23% of the public's on Medicaid, so just about everyone knows someone on Medicaid or a member of the family is enrolled in the program. It's in their interest to support it. On the other side of the issue, there is strong support for the work requirement included in the bill. The bill puts a requirement for able-bodied adults between the ages of 18 and 64 without dependent children would have to perform some form of work, educational training, or public service to remain on Medicaid. Those with dependent children under the age of 14 would be exempt from the requirement, and Democrats don't talk much about that part of it. Cue the outrage by Democrats who view this as the issue they've been waiting for. When they denounced the proposed cuts, they never mentioned a study by the Government Accounting Office that was issued in 2024 during the Biden administration. Just in the year 2023, they reported over $100 billion improper payments were made in the Medicare and Medicaid programs. That's just for 1 year. The bill recently passed by Congress cuts Medicaid spending by $770 billion over 10 years. Assuming that's half the fraudulent payments for Medicaid, that's close to $600 billion over the 10-year period that can be saved by attacking that part of the problem. Looking at the legislation just passed, we find that the original version of the bill included various reforms to Medicaid, like work requirements, as I said, for able-bodied adults, and provisions limiting funding for undocumented immigrants and gender transition procedures. To this, Democrats responded with instant outrage. Quote, Medicaid is a lifeline for millions of kids, seniors, veterans, and people with disabilities in our states and nationwide. Republicans' proposed cuts would be disastrous, end quote. The final version of the bill eliminates some of the more thorny cost-saving provisions while keeping the work requirement in place. Yet Democrats are still dissatisfied with the bill, with Governor Newsom claiming, quote, the president and his MAGA enablers are ripping care from cancer patients, meals from children, and money from working families, end quote. That's a lot of hyperbole. But it's apparent that Democrats are posturing on this bill because there's no actual cuts to Medicaid. The bill only reduces the rate of growth in Medicaid spending, but the overall cost to the taxpayers will continue to increase. The problem is that Medicaid is structured in such a way that for every $1 that state spends on Medicaid, the federal government matches it by up to $9. This designs states' politicians to grant their constituents $10 in political goodies while only incurring $1 political cost. Where does that money come from? Federal taxes and the debt. Now that Washington is cutting back its match rate, this windfall of benefits without cost to states will slow down. States must choose between funding the gap themselves, which means raising taxes, or reducing coverage. State officials, many of whom facing re-election in the next few years, would rather do neither and keep this party going. Now that Washington is cutting back its match rate, it's got to be a problem. The bill would also close down the scheme of states taxing Medicaid providers at higher rates, then allowing them to charge more for Medicaid services, which in turn triggers more federal dollars back to the state from the federal government. By changing the rules, it prohibits higher tax rates on Medicaid providers than non-Medicaid businesses. This is a complicated statistical rule, and the states have realized how to capitalize on it. It does not increase the care patients get, but simply force the government to pay more and more. In some cases, the states actually end up with more money through this scheme. So it's time for Republicans to get out and tell the story that Medicaid is not being cut, just slow down. They need to ask people if they object to the work requirement for able-bodied adults, because they will find that voters support that requirement. If they sit back and allow the Democrats and their buddies in the media to frame the narrative, then the public will never get the real facts. This has been To My Liberal Friends. Thanks for listening.